Hello, I'm David Yepsen of the Des Moines Register and weekly reporter on Iowa Press. As a resource for Iowa's future, Iowa Public Television is helping you make intelligent choices about your future in its coverage of the election campaigns. And time is running out. Join us all this week as we help you make sense of the issues, the major candidates, and the less well-known, their background and their positions. We'll examine the campaign process and take some time to look at the lighter side as well. It's a tall order, but our future is at stake. So look to Iowa Public Television all this week for continuing coverage of Election 92.
Something has happened in another part of the world or another part of town. A story is unfolding, and public television is there.
Confrontation will get South Africa nowhere.
It is a story of conflict between people, cultures, and countries. A story of victories and defeat, of armies and ideas.
A totalitarianism and a brutality that is naked and unprecedented.
Told in the clear and thoughtful voice of public television's critically acclaimed news and public affairs programs.
What I am saying...
You are withdrawing from that.
No.
Because news is more than information. Because events deserve our attention and understanding. Because life is not a soundbite.
A resource for Iowa's future. Iowa Public Television.
Stimulate jobs.
Killing ourselves with health costs. We're $4 trillion in debt.
Nuclear weapons.
National economic strategy. Finest education system.
The candidates. A final look before the vote. Talking with David Frost.
Tune in to Iowa Public Television Friday night at 9.
Hi, I'm Mark Russell with another comedy special on public television. You know, I've often wondered how we get through an election year without the humor that comes out of a presidential campaign. Sheer entertainment from both parties, coming from their deadly serious platforms and promises and programs. I'll say this for them, at least they haven't charged us an entertainment tax. Yet.
Tune in to Iowa Public Television Wednesday at 7.
Next time on Frontline, who finances presidential campaigns? And what do they get in return?
They're business people, and they see this as an investment.
Frontline investigates the campaign financiers in the best campaign money can buy.
Tune in to Iowa Public Television Tuesday at 8.
Stay tuned for more TV worth watching right here on Iowa Public Television, a resource for Iowa's future.
Acquisition of this program is made possible by Friends of Iowa Public Television. And this broadcast of the Nightly Business Report is brought to you locally by the full-service investment firm of Piper Jaffray and its employees, with offices in Des Moines, Quad Cities, Waterloo, Sioux City, Mason City, and Storm Lake.
The Nightly Business Report with Cassie Seifert in New York and Paul Kangas in Miami.
Good evening. Coming up on NBR, some solid corporate earnings give the Dow a solid run-up late in the day.
And Robert Stempel calls it quits as head of General Motors, ending weeks of speculation.
NBR is made possible by Digital Equipment Corporation, leveraging investments in information systems for today and tomorrow. People come to us for results. The $63 billion Franklin Group of Funds, helping 2 million investors reach their goal since 1947. Franklin funds are distributed nationwide by investment professionals. A.G. Edwards, member of the New York Stock Exchange, serving the investment needs of individuals and businesses through more than 400 offices nationwide. And is produced in association with Reuters, the world's largest electronic publisher, which provides NBR with news, market data, and communication services worldwide.
Robert Stempel resigned as chairman of General Motors today under pressure to stem the flow of red ink from the nation's largest industrial company. In a statement, Stempel said he could no longer watch the effects of rumors and speculation about his status undermine the automaker. General Motors stock rose 5/8 to 34 1/8. Leslie Nickel reports.
Robert Stempel's resignation came as no surprise to the auto industry. Analysts say he was a good leader caught in the middle of bad times.
He was hindered by a lot of factors out of his control. The economy has not helped. He assumed the chairmanship the day before the Gulf War started, and there have just been so many problems with the union and so on since he's taken helm.
Since last December, the company has been trying to restructure and stem a record-breaking tide of red ink. Last year, GM lost more than $7 billion. While Stempel had announced massive layoffs and plant closings, by spring, the company's outside directors were said to be dissatisfied with the pace of the reorganization. In April, Stempel was replaced as chairman of the board's executive committee. His longtime colleague, Lloyd Royce, was demoted, and Jack Smith was brought in from the company's European operations as president. However, the automaker still continued to lose money. Analysts expect GM to announce an $840 million loss for the third quarter this Thursday. Most experts do not expect Stempel's departure in itself to stem the automaker's losses, but they do believe it shows GM's board is serious in its efforts to move more quickly.
It does produce an increased resolve at General Motors that they are going to attempt to make these changes.
Stempel is expected to stay on as chairman until a new one is selected. While GM has not announced his replacement, analysts say John Smale may be the new chairman and Jack Smith the new CEO. GM's board is scheduled to meet next Monday, and analysts expect a new management team to be announced at that time. Leslie Nickel, NBR Chicago.
Sales of existing homes in September dropped to their lowest level since January, despite the most affordable mortgage rates in nearly 20 years. The National Association of Realtors says home resales fell 0.9% last month. That compares with a revised 4.1% decline in August. Those poor results pushed the median price of an existing home down slightly last month to $103,200.
After advancing 33.25 points on the Dow Industrial Average last week overall, the stock market continued to move cautiously higher early today amid growing confidence that the economy was coming out of its comatose condition, as suggested by some better-than-expected third-quarter corporate earnings reports. At 10 a.m., the Dow was up almost 6 points, with 7 stocks higher for every 6 lower. The early upturn lost momentum during mid-session, partly because of lower bond prices and the lack of oppressive volume. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average came alive again in afternoon trading, led by Procter & Gamble on good earnings news. A rally in the airlines and improving bonds bolstered the market to a sharp late rally, and that lifted the Dow Industrial Average to a closing gain of 36.47, putting it at 3244.11. So we gained more today than we did all of last week. Now, today we closed within about 3/4 point of the best level of the session and up 39 points from the low. Trading volume, however, well down from Friday's pace at 188.1 million shares, but up volume exceeded down volume by about 3 times. The transports did exceedingly well, led by the airlines up almost 23.25 points, utilities up just over 3/4 point, and the closing tick a fairly bullish plus 343. Standard & Poor's 500 up just over 4 points, almost a 4.25 point rise in the 100. Mid-cap 400 was up just over 1/4 point. Commodity Research Bureau December index up just a small fraction. The New York Stock Exchange index rose almost 2 points. Value line nearly 1/4 and 1.25 points higher, and the Wilshire 5000 had a good gain of just over 30.25 points. Bond prices opened in retreat, partly because the financial press over the weekend seemed to be saying that the economy does appear to be picking up a bit. The implication there, of course, being that interest rates may have seen the bottom. This market was also under pressure because of concerns over large upcoming debt offerings. While tax-free and corporate issues fell just 1/8 point on average, then longer-term governments were down about 1/4 point, 30-year Treasuries down 7/32, and the Shearson Lehman Long Bond Index dropped just over 2 points, while Fed funds edged up a bit from Friday to close at 3.18%. Later on, I'll show you where the action was on Wall Street today. Cassie?
Well, the dollar ended narrowly mixed against most currencies in New York trading today. However, expectations of lower British interest rates sent the greenback higher against the pound. The dollar edged up against the mark, yen, and Swiss franc and gained nearly 4 cents against the pound. On the precious metals markets, gold lost $2.50 an ounce, but the metal remained above the key support level of $341 an ounce. Platinum fell $1.20. Silver dropped 2 cents.
On the campaign trail today, the focus was on the post-election period. President Bush said if he's reelected, he will work with Congress on legislation to revive the American economy. He also said he plans to create a fund to help the defense industry adjust to a peacetime economy. Bill Clinton's advisors say they're preparing to start work on the nation's economic problems right after the election if Clinton wins. They say that just the appearance of a president who makes the economy a top priority will help. And Ross Perot says he accepts White House statements that they don't know anything about alleged dirty tricks against him or his daughter. At a news conference, he said he's sick and tired of having his integrity questioned, and he doesn't want to talk about it again.
On tonight's final segment of The Money Chase, John Palmer looks at how we might improve the way we finance our elections. John is in Washington, and he begins with the latest campaign contribution totals. John?
Cassie, the latest numbers were compiled by the nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics and are based on data from the Federal Election Commission from January the 1st, 1991 to June 30th, 1992. Final numbers will be released sometime next spring, but here's what we have so far. The totals confirm that business represented by individual, corporate, and political action committee donations is far and away the single largest source of political money in the country. Labor, which gives almost exclusively through PACs, was outspent by business by more than 5 to 1. The GOP got $20 million more from business than the Democrats, but the Democrats got 93% of Labor's $29 million contribution to capture the overall lead in the money chase. Within the business category, lawyers and lobbyists who habitually haunt the corridors of power gave the most money. Second on the list was the securities and investment industry, with most of its investment in loosely restricted soft money. The list of the most generous contributors was rounded out by industries with a very keen interest in the legislative agenda of the next administration and Congress.
Numbers like this inevitably call to mind the golden rule. He or she that has the gold rules. And what that really means is that in American election processes, the candidates chase not blocks of voters, but blocks of investors. And the perfect limit case to make the point is Ross Perot. He's the only presidential candidate talking about serious reform of the process, and he's the only presidential candidate who doesn't need anybody else's money to mount the campaign.
As Tom Ferguson just noted, the race for dollars is just as important as the race for votes, perhaps in some cases even more important. I've been joined by two people very familiar with the race for dollars and the complex world of campaign financing. Ellen Miller, Executive Director of the Center for Responsive Politics, and Stephen Stockmeyer, Executive Vice President of the National Association of Business PACs. Welcome. Ellen, we knew business was a big player here, but according to your latest numbers, business was even a bigger player than we thought.
Well, as we've been able to open the window on who funds campaigns beyond just the congressional side of things, we see an even larger picture for business. PACs are not really major players at the presidential level. They're not major players when you give to the parties, and they're certainly not players in the soft money arena. So now that we can identify individual contributors, we see that individuals, and particularly bundled corporate contributions through individuals, really opens our window on what we know about who's funding American campaigns.
Let's talk a bit now about campaign reform. During this series, we have seen what appeared to be some abuses. What about PACs, Stephen? Do you see any reform needed there in political action committees and the way they're used in politics?
Well, I think it's important first to understand what they are, and that political action committees are groups of ordinary Americans that band together to try to magnify their political voices. They're fully disclosed. They're very strictly limited as to what they can spend on campaigns. We think PACs are a model for reform. If we took all the kinds of contributions outside of PACs that Ellen was talking about and put them in the PAC model, we'd have the system much better under control.
What about that, Ellen? Are PACs a model for reform?
Well, I'd hardly hate to think so. I mean, what's good about PACs is that we are able to trace where their money comes from and the precise interest that they have when it comes to lobbying Capitol Hill or the executive branch. But in fact, PACs are only one small part of the problem. I mean, our recent release saw that PAC giving is to Congress only. There, it's only about half the money that goes to Congress. And we really have to widen our understanding of what we have in terms of money in politics. I mean, we have a system of privately funded elections, elections which are supposed to be fair and equal, public elections funded by a whole host of private interests.
What about this question, the ultimate question, I guess, about campaign reform and political spending reform, and that is that all elections from the county courthouse all the way to the White House should be, only public money should be used and not private money. What about that, Stephen?
Well, first of all, I don't think the taxpayers would stand for that. And we do have that system sort of in the presidential race and the general election, and we can see from Ellen's figures that it just doesn't work when you have all public money, because America is a society of interests. Interests have a right and a responsibility and always will try to participate in campaigns no matter what rules and regulations you have. That's why we always say, let's put it all on the table, let's reasonably limit it, and make sure the voters know where this support's coming from. I don't think the taxpayers would stand, though, for campaigns.
And quickly, Ellen, do you think this is a good idea?
Money should not be the determinant of access or influence or success in the political system.
Thank you both for being with us. And that completes our series that we have been calling The Money Chase about campaign financing. Let's go back to New York and Cassie.
John, what surprised you the most in working on this series?
Well, Cassie, several things. One is the amount of money that is spent in these campaigns, $2.7 billion we reported in our first report back in 1988. The fact that business plays such a major role, and the fact that sometimes it's the politicians that go to the Political Action Committee soliciting funds rather than the other way around.
And of course, so many people have been surprised to learn about soft money.
Yes, soft money is really the key here. Certainly reform, most of the ideas about reform are aimed there. That, of course, is where money is given for party building to state and local committees, but actually the money seeps through and helps federal candidates, certainly in the presidential race. And that's an area where most people point to as in great need of reform.
All right, well, we thank you very much. Terrific series. And you've certainly struck a nerve. We've had more than 5,000 calls for additional information. We're going to give you a number now that provides specific information about candidates for president, governor, and Congress, including where they get their money. You can also get biographical information about the candidates and find out where they stand on specific issues. It's a service of Project Vote Smart, an independent, nonpartisan group. The number is 1-800-786-6885, and the call is free.
The EPA has set final rules for cutting acid rain emissions in half by the year 2010.